In the summer of 1977, I was 10 years old, and I learned every new sound my house could make, because for almost a year, somebody was trying to teach them to me. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio, the kind of place where you left your bike in the yard overnight and nobody thought twice about it. My father worked at a printing plant. My mother did the books for a hardware store 2 days a week. I had a younger brother, Denny, who was 7, and we shared a bedroom on the second floor with 2 twin beds pushed against opposite walls. Nothing about us was special. That's the part that still gets me, even now. We were about as ordinary as a family could be. It started, as far as I can tell, with a bag of groceries. My mother had taken me to the supermarket on a Saturday afternoon in June. I remember it because I'd begged for a box of cereal with a plastic prize inside, and she'd finally given in. While she was at the register, I wandered a few feet away to look at a rack of comic books, and a man standing near the door said something to me. I don't remember his exact words. Something about the cereal, something friendly enough that I didn't think anything of it. He was maybe 35, average height, wearing a brown jacket even though it was warm out. What I remember most is that he smiled at me the way adults do when they're trying too hard, and he asked my name. I told him. Kids did that back then. Nobody had taught us not to. My mother came over a second later, took my hand, and we left. She didn't seem to notice him at all. I forgot about it before we even got to the car. 3 weeks later, our phone rang at 11 at night. My father answered it the way he always did, his voice thick with sleep. I heard him say hello twice, then nothing. He stood in the hallway outside my parents' bedroom for a long moment before he hung up. Wrong number, he told my mother, and that was that. It happened again 2 nights later, and then again the night after. Always late. Always silence on the other end except for breathing. My father started to get irritated, more than frightened. He assumed it was kids from town messing around, maybe some of the older boys who liked to cause trouble on weekends. He even called the operator once to ask if there was a way to trace it. She told him that wasn't something the phone company could do unless the police requested it, and my father wasn't ready to call the police over prank calls yet. Nobody would have been back then. A phone ringing at night was an annoyance. It wasn't a threat. Not yet. The first time I saw him near our house, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was early July, and I was in our side yard catching fireflies with Denny in a mason jar with holes poked in the lid. Our house sat on a corner lot with a stretch of trees separating our yard from the Hendersons' property next door. Around dusk, I looked up and saw a man standing near the tree line, just standing there, hands in his pockets, watching us. I couldn't see his face clearly in the fading light, but something about how still he was made the hair go up on my arms. I grabbed Denny's hand and we went inside. When I told my mother, she looked out the window, saw nothing, and told me it was probably Mr. Henderson checking on something in his yard. I wanted to believe her. I mostly did. Looking back, I think that was the moment everything started to change, even if none of us knew it yet. Through the rest of July, small things went missing. A pair of my father's work gloves from the garage. A garden trowel my mother kept by the back porch. Nothing valuable, nothing anyone would call the police about. My father blamed neighborhood kids. My mother started locking the garage at night, something she'd never done before, and my father teased her a little for it, the way you tease someone for being extra careful about nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. In August, the phone calls changed. Instead of silence, there was a voice. Low, calm. My mother was the one who answered that time, and she wouldn't tell me exactly what he said to her, not for years. What she told me, eventually, was that he said her name, not asked for her. Said it like he already knew who he was talking to, and then he said mine, my actual name. The one I'd told a stranger by a cereal display 2 months earlier, a memory I'd long since let go of. My mother hung up so fast she cracked the handset against the phone cradle. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did I, though I didn't know why at the time. I just remember lying in the dark, listening to my parents talk in low voices through the wall, the kind of hushed, careful talking that tells a child something is wrong, even when you can't make out the words. My father called the police the next morning. The officer who came out, a heavy-set man named Deputy Coyle, was polite and took notes, but I remember the way he talked to my parents. Gentle, a little dismissive. He said kids sometimes got hold of a family's information from the church directory or a school roster, and that this was probably some prank that had gone further than it should have. He told my parents to keep a log of the calls and to contact the phone company about getting an unlisted number. There wasn't much more he could do. There was no way to trace a call in 1977 unless it happened while an officer was standing right there, and there was no way anyone was going to station a deputy in our kitchen every night waiting for the phone to ring. We got the unlisted number within the week. The calls stopped for 11 days. I remember counting because my mother marked each day on the kitchen calendar with a small check mark, like she was keeping score against someone. For 11 days, our house felt like ours again. Then, on a Tuesday evening, the phone rang, and it was him. He had our new number. He recited it back to my father, calm as anything, before my father could even ask who was calling. Then he said something my father repeated to Deputy Coyle, almost word for word. "Tell your wife the roses need trimming on the east side." We had rose bushes along the east side of our house. He was right. They did need trimming. That was the first time I understood, really understood, that whoever this was could see us, not just watching from a distance sometimes. Watching closely, watching enough to notice something as small and specific as an overgrown rose bush that even we hadn't gotten around to caring about yet. After that call, my father started sleeping with a baseball bat leaned against his side of the bed. My mother stopped letting Denny and me play outside without her sitting on the porch steps, watching us the entire time. The neighborhood noticed. Mrs. Henderson asked my mother if everything was all right, and my mother, ever proud, told her we were just being cautious after some prank calls. She didn't want anyone to know how frightened she really was. I think, looking back, that was a kind of shame nobody should have to carry, as if being stalked was something you'd done wrong. In September, somebody got into our garage. My father found the side door unlocked one morning, though he was certain he'd locked it the night before, the way he'd started locking everything. Nothing was missing this time, or nothing we noticed at first. But on the workbench, arranged neatly in a row, were 3 of Denny's toy soldiers. Ones we hadn't seen in weeks. Ones my brother swore he'd left in his toy box in our bedroom. Someone had taken them out of our house and lined them up in the garage like a message we weren't meant to understand, only meant to feel. Deputy Coyle came back out. He walked the property with my father, checked the garage door, the windows, the gate at the back fence. He found a partial boot print in the soft dirt near the fence line, the kind of print that could have belonged to anyone. He told my parents he'd start having a patrol car swing by more often at night. It didn't feel like enough. It wasn't enough. October is when it stopped being something that just happened to the adults and started happening to me directly. I was walking home from a friend's house 3 streets over, something I'd done 100 times without a second thought. It was maybe 5 in the afternoon, still light out, and a car slowed beside me on the road. A dark sedan, the kind that could have belonged to half the fathers in town. The window came down, and the man inside looked at me for a long moment before he spoke. "You look just like your mother," he said. Then he drove on. I stood on the sidewalk for what felt like a full minute before I could make my legs move again. I ran the rest of the way home and told my mother everything. The car, the way he'd looked at me, the exact words. She called my father at work. She called Deputy Coyle. For the first time, I saw real panic on my mother's face. Not the careful, contained worry she'd been showing us for months, but something closer to terror. We started locking the bedroom windows at night, even though it was still warm enough that we wanted them open. My father nailed a second lock onto the back door. Denny began wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 4, and my mother never once got angry about it. She just changed the sheets and held him a little longer at bedtime. The last week of October, the letters started, handwritten, no return address, dropped straight into our mailbox instead of coming through the regular mail. My mother found the first one and read it, before she realized what it was. She wouldn't repeat most of what it said, only that it described our house in detail, our porch light, the color of Denny's bicycle, the fact that I like to read on the front steps in the afternoon. It was signed with a single initial that meant nothing to any of us. Not a name we knew. Not a name anyone in town recognized when my father asked around carefully, quietly, at the plant and at church. 2 more letters came over the following 10 days, each one a little more specific, each one making it clearer that this person wasn't just watching from the tree line anymore. He knew our habits, he knew our schedule. He knew when my father left for work and when my mother walked to the hardware store and when Denny and I walked home from school. My father slept on the living room couch after that, close to the front door, the bat within reach. I remember waking up one night to the sound of him standing in the hallway outside our bedroom door, just standing there, listening, the same way he had after that first strange phone call months earlier. Except this time I understood exactly what he was listening for. The final thing happened on a Friday night in early November, and it's the reason we don't live in that house anymore. My parents had gone to a school function, a fundraiser at the elementary school that ran later than they'd planned, and our regular babysitter, a teenage girl named Carol who lived 2 doors down, was watching Denny and me. Around 9, Carol thought she heard something at the back door and went to check, telling us to stay in the living room. She came back a minute later, pale, saying she thought she'd seen someone standing at the edge of the yard, near the same tree line where I'd first spotted a figure back in July. She locked the door, called my parents at the school, and they came home immediately. When my father checked the property that night, he found the back gate standing open, though Carol swore she'd checked it earlier and it had been latched. And on the porch, sitting neatly on the top step where anyone walking up to the house would see it first, was Denny's stuffed rabbit, the one he slept with every single night, the one that had been in our bedroom, upstairs, behind 2 locked windows and a locked front door when we'd left the house that evening. Somebody had been inside our home while we were gone, not just at the door. Inside. My parents didn't wait for morning. They called Deputy Coyle that same night, and for the first time I heard real urgency in an officer's voice when he told my father he was coming right over. He searched the house room by room, top to bottom, closets, the attic crawl space, everywhere. He found nothing. No sign of forced entry anywhere, no broken locks, no disturbed windows. Whoever had gotten in and out had done it clean, and none of us could explain how. We stayed with my grandmother that night, all 4 of us crowded into her small house across town, and we never spent another night under our own roof again. My father put the house up for sale within the month, and by January of 1978, we'd moved nearly 90 miles away to a small rental house near my mother's sister. My father took a pay cut to make it happen. He never once said it wasn't worth it. The calls stopped completely once we left. No more letters. No more men standing at the tree line. Deputy Coyle kept the case file open for a while, but without a name, without a plate number, without anything solid enough to chase, it eventually went cold and stayed that way. Nobody was ever caught. Nobody was ever even identified. To this day, I don't know if it was the man from the grocery store, the man in the sedan, someone from our own neighborhood who knew us well enough to fake being a stranger, or 2 or 3 different things I convinced myself, as a child, were only one. My parents didn't talk about that year much after we left, not in front of Denny and me. I think they wanted us to be able to forget it, the way children sometimes can if the adults around them refuse to keep the wound open. I mostly did forget, for a long time. I grew up. I moved away for college. I had my own kids eventually, and I never told them why I checked the door locks twice every night before bed. Why I still feel my stomach drop a little when the phone rings after 10 o'clock. Why I've never once, not in over 40 years, left a house unlocked, not even for 5 minutes. Not even in a safe neighborhood, not even during the day. About 6 years ago, my mother passed away, and I was going through a box of her old keepsakes. The kind every mother keeps without ever really explaining why. Near the bottom, wrapped in a rubber band gone brittle with age, was a small stack of folded paper. The letters. She'd kept them the entire time, decades after we left that house, decades after Deputy Coyle closed the file, decades after any of us ever spoke that man's shadow out loud again. I almost didn't unfold them. Part of me wishes I hadn't. Tucked behind the 3rd letter in the same handwriting, on a separate scrap of paper my mother had never shown any of us, was a short, unfinished line, like it had been the start of a 4th letter that was never sent, or never needed to be. It read, "Tell them I found the new house, too." I don't know when he wrote that. I don't know if he ever mailed anything like it, and my mother simply never told us, choosing instead to carry that particular fear alone for the rest of her life so that Denny and I wouldn't have to. I don't know if it was true. I don't know if it was ever meant for us at all. But I know I haven't slept with my bedroom window open since the day I found it.